Hello, everyone. The Westport Country Playhouse would like to welcome you back to another episode of Coffee Break. My name is Jacob Santos, and I am your host. And this is the space where we talk to artists and colleagues about their art form. We talk to them about their career in the industry. So welcome back, everyone. And this week, I'm going to be speaking with Michael Rossmy, who is a fight choreographer and also an intimacy choreographer. And I'm super excited to talk to him. So I see he's ready to join, and I'll add you in 1 second, Michael. But yeah, as anyone might know, I moved recently from my place in Bridgeport to New Haven because I'm starting grad school in the fall, and I'm still getting acclimated to my space there to the point where, so I don't like moving. So when I moved to my new place the first week, I was like, I'm not unpacking, I'm not doing that. But so the fact that I didn't have stuff up in my room that I recognize, I woke up one of these nights and I was like, where am I? I was like, this isn't my home back in Bridgeport. Where am I? So since I didn't have the iconography of my usual room, I just didn't know where I was. So that's a fun little story. Let me bring Michael on. Hey everyone, here we go. Added him right now. Hello everyone. Mike, what is up?
Hello. Hey, Jacob. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to Instagram.
Thank you. Thank you. I know this is my inaugural trip. I'm shocked that it all worked out, actually.
I know. Literally, the start of the show is the most nerve-wracking point for me every week because I don't trust technology. But it worked out great. Now we're here.
Yeah, you've forced me to become contemporary.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long this will last on my phone, but we'll see. So no pressure. It's all up to you whether or not I keep this here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it's interesting because I feel like I've met more people during this quarantine time than I have at any other point in my life, which is weird because we're supposed to be social distancing. But since we've all sort of kind of been pushed into this digital space, I've had the opportunity to meet more people. But it's strange meeting new folks in the context of this square digital box. So how do you feel during this time?
Yeah, I mean, similarly to you, it's a weird dichotomy of being homebound, and then I'm generally a technophobe, but then we rely on this now so heavily for our interaction. But yeah, meeting people other people for the first time, it's going to be quite a strange thing for me to meet for the first time in my 12 years teaching an incoming class only digitally and not having the benefit of an interpersonal experience of being able to be in the room and sharing that first meeting, viscerally and tangibly together, as opposed to kind of virtually together, which is it's a great substitute. I'm not going to lie. It's better than it's better this way than nothing.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. And how have you been taking care of yourself during this time?
I think similarly to what a lot of people are saying, it's about trying to maintain some of the routines kind of pre-COVID, pre-isolation, and then getting a little bit clever with the things that I have at my disposal. So I'm in Hoboken, which is colloquially called the sixth borough. So it's if you haven't been to Hoboken in New Jersey, it's very similar to the architecture of the Upper West Side, where it's rows of brownstones. It's just a little bit kind of slower paced than New York, but the population density is still roughly the same. So it's difficult to go out and about in the world. Luckily, in my building, I have a small backyard, so that's the place where I'm trying to maintain my exercise routine. I've given myself a little field trip where I go up to the roof, and I call that going to the beach, just because it's just to reframe it, to give myself a little. And then beyond that, just kind of allowing myself the space to veg out when I need to, or to do all the other forms of self-care, and to allow myself to become comfortable with a much slower pace than I am used to, or that I felt was the pace that I thrived at.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. That definitely resonates. Like finding some semblance of a routine, whether it's like the one before or finding a new one that feels comfortable. And also like being in quote unquote isolation is really an interesting thing because we're such a social species, but also like now we like have the challenge of like being comfortable with ourselves and being happy like in isolation with ourselves. So like that's also been something I've been like, oh yeah, like I'm fun to be around just myself too. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I
Like,
mean?
wait a minute, I am great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Michael, yeah, what were you gonna say?
Oh, no, no. Go ahead.
Okay, let me ask you. This is what I ask all my guests: is what has been your journey with theater, and like when did you first start with the art form?
I started what I consider to be fairly late in my process. I didn't take my first acting class until my sophomore year in college. Uh,
Okay.
Prior to that, I was just, I guess every, quote unquote, normal kid growing up in New York. I did sports, but I was very solitary. Had always loved, putting on voices and doing characters and things like that, but never really was inspired to go into the acting route when I was younger. I had crazy anxiety and stage fright that precluded me from doing it. Um, I got into oddly enough, a pre-med program for college. I was all set to go down that route and was getting very stressed out by the workload. And my grandmother, who I guess had always seen this aspect of me, said, why don't you just relax and take an acting class? And I took that one acting class, and it literally changed my life. I switched majors to the chagrin of my parents until they understood kind of what my grandmother had already known all along.
Yeah.
Went through the remainder of college, then stayed on at that university to go through the grad program, just figuring that they knew me, so that it was going to garner me some more stage time that I desperately needed. Then came back to New York, where I grew up. Started working with the Shakespeare Theatre of New Jersey, started acting professionally, started going down that road, and then that kind of naturally turned into, they say every actor has a quote unquote day job, right? So rather than my day job being, bartending or waiting tables, which are things that I did to put myself through school, I met a mentor in fight direction, and he took me under his wing so that my day job was still in the industry. It was a parallel field in the industry, and then that turned into really skewing myself to do that more professionally, which turned into teaching more. And now, in the age of COVID and how things are going from here, who knows what the next kind of hybrid journey will be? But yeah, so that was my path, which is probably an exception to the rule that you often hear, that we hear in our community. But it's been valuable. It's
Wow.
been, I wouldn't change it. It's what brought me here. So, how could I couldn't say that it was the wrong thing or the right thing. It's just what happened.
Yeah. It's so interesting how in everyone's story there is like this moment where theater kind of just becomes like a possibility or an option for someone. Like that happened to me. So like I didn't do theater until my senior year of high school, and one of my friends asked me to be part of the theater club with them. And I was like, sure, it's senior year, I'll go do something. And like that was like a profoundly life-changing experience for me. But then when I went to college, I was pre-pharmacy for my first semester, and then
All
I
right.
realized,
So, this
yeah,
does resonate. This story does resonate with you.
yeah. And then I
Yeah.
was like, absolutely not. This is actually not the road for me. And then I eventually transferred schools and went to a theater department, and here we are today.
Not only here we are today, but hopefully in person at a specific university where we will both be walking the halls.
Yes, yes. So
Yeah. Yeah.
let's talk about that. What is it like being an instructor at the School of Drama?
Well, first, no, no. First time out. Congratulations on coming to the program.
Thank
I really look forward to after we've met here digitally to meet in person and
Yes.
share some space together there.
Definitely.
Yeah, congratulations. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. What's it like? Um, it's probably one of the greatest joys of my life.
Mm.
It you know, it's just as life changing for the students as it is for the faculty, and what we get back is monumental. I love my students so much, and to be able to share part of this journey with them, to help shape them in whatever small ways that I can, is just it's so fulfilling. It's watching everybody's creativity and seeing them just like, I don't know. It's kind of the words kind of fail me sometimes as to the significance of it. We're creating, just we as artists. We're such a valuable, at least to us, we're such a valuable aspect of society, which I think very often is taken for granted, because there have always been storytellers, and storytellers often take on this weird stigmatized version of dreamers, of semi-outcasts. But it's our job to hold up the mirror to the world about what they're doing correctly and what they're doing incorrectly, and to be able to be a part of that thousands of year old legacy of storytellers and truth tellers is really powerful to me, mm-hmm. and meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And that I get to use what I know about acting, what I know about fights and intimacy, to help make sure not only that the stories are being told most poignantly and properly, but also safely for performers, so that it is healthy and sustainable and joyous, regardless of the subject matter, that our performers are filled with the joy and the safety, so that they can go home and go into their lives without carrying any baggage from some of the things that we are asked to portray and tell.
Mm-hmm. And you being a fight director, basically you are an instructor on stage. So you feel like the work that you actually do on stage helped translate you, or like you acquired skills in being a professor? Because like some roles in our art form, like you can be a great actor, but doesn't mean you're going to be a great like professor at acting. But like you being a fight director and teaching in general, do you feel like that work helped you in teaching, like doing that instruction?
I mean, certainly acting and teaching are performative. Mm-hmm. And I think because it's, I tell my students, and like of the philosophy that was handed to me that I've kind of embraced and expanded on in my pedagogy, it's ours is an acting class, and I tell my students that it's a physical acting class, right? So for those people watching, for people who don't have a familiarity with fight direction, it's a tool that's used really at its base, kind of like what a dance break is used for, or what bursting out into song is used for. Like these three skill sets are used, when regular dialogue is not enough to convey the emotion that we feel, right? We break into song, we break into dance, we fight, we kiss, we make love. All of those things are all one. So it's not like it, though it is choreography, it's not choreography, it's acting. It's physical dialogue as opposed to verbal dialogue. So and tying that back to class, what that does help me in my teaching is it's made me hyper aware of body language and how emotion is conveyed through body language, which that, on top of being in this industry, I think we're all of us in this industry are pretty high level empaths. So when you combine all of that, I think that does absolutely help me be a better teacher, because I'm able to read the room, and I'm able to see what resonates and what doesn't, and I'm able to correct certain things that maybe I've said, or that have been misinterpreted, or that I've misspoken, or that I'm able to help lock into a performer's emotional state, to help draw out a physicalized aspect of that maybe they didn't see, because they're so in the moment, in that emotional state, that they don't have the perspective to then see, oh, we can do this, and this physicalization will enhance that exact thing that you're feeling, that you're playing. Yeah, so that for me is the connective tissue that bridges that gap between simply like giving somebody choreography and asking somebody to physically act or physically storytell.
Mm-hmm. And the trust is such a huge part of the rehearsal space. And when a rehearsal starts, trust is built between actors, it's built between the directors, the stage managers. But when you come in to coordinate, say, a fight scene or a scene that's more intimate, how do you help actors trust each other through that process?
I mean, I think the first way to do it is to make sure that they trust me. So it's about how, like, the ground rules that I'm going to come in and help, and for instance, you're at Westport, and I work with everybody at Westport quite a bit. Mark Lamos and David Kennedy are like family to me. So I have the benefit of having a really wonderful shorthand with the two of them. There's an implicit trust that we share, so that when I come into the room with them, they allow me the freedom to then circle up the actors, speak cogently to them about what we want, and I'm then become the conduit between the director and then the actors for these moments. So it's about them building that language of trust. And the first thing that I do to honor everyone is I say, if I ever ask anything, and start by saying that I'm going to ask. I'm not going to make you. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to ask that we do this or that we try this. And if that means no, I want to hear no. No is a valuable response. It's not just yes. It's not just yes and. It can be no but, right? Mm-hmm. And that could just be lip service, and it is, until the actor, quote unquote, calls me on it, and we say something and they say no. And then how I build the trust then is by listening to them and say, great, no means no. You don't have to explain the no. No means no. And then we'll find a different way to tell this moment, to share this story. And then if they trust me to do that, they know that I have their best interests at heart. And then what I'll do, depending on how big the fight moments are, we'll do a couple exercises that give a common vocabulary. And that regardless of what people show up to the rehearsal with, we're going to use my common vocabulary, and we're going to share that vocabulary. So that way, when two actors might be working, they're not working through competing language and competing styles. We're all agreeing to the terminology that happens in the room. So then that fosters the trust, because then one person doesn't have to worry about something just randomly happening, or somebody giving a cue that they don't understand, but it's just going to happen. So that everybody feels that, regardless of skill level, regardless of awareness, that we are all starting off from scratch together. And then beyond that, it's about going as fast as the room allows. Like very often we're in this hurry up, wait kind of mentality. And we can only move as fast as we can all move. So we embrace the process instead of like trying to force a product. And we only move as slow as everybody can process. And in that, and all of that groundwork, then we can start doing exciting things. But it's all based on, really fundamentally based on consent. And, and consent can work, people only talk about consent really, or not only, but predominantly talk about consent in terms of intimacy. But it's consent whenever we're doing anything with each other. A handshake, a hug, a fake punch, any of that. It's all consent-based. And if people aren't going to have their consent acknowledged before we even begin, then there can't ever be any trust. So it's about acknowledging that consent, empowering the no, and just making sure that the cast understands, or that sees and witnesses, that we are honoring them as people first, as actors second, and that their boundaries, their requests are going to be honored.
Definitely, definitely. And I'm trying to figure out how to word this question, so apologies if it's a little bit sloppily asked, but what is it? So, like, during this time, I feel like all of the art that we're consuming is obviously not live. So, live theater is not happening. So, we're watching movies, we're watching streaming, we're on Netflix, we're on Disney Plus, et cetera, et cetera. But what is it about theater that you love and that's like sorely missed during this time because we can't do it right now?
Jacob, every last bit of it. There is not one thing. I think I will literally break down in tears the next time I walk into a space.
Mm,
It's it is the people, it is the camaraderie, it is the shared drive, like just this drive, this unstoppable drive to create, to collaborate. That is just it's just life changing. It's game changing to have that taken away from us, and then the thought of it, whenever it comes back, the thought of it coming back just fills me with so many emotions. Um, I just miss. I miss seeing everybody. I miss seeing the thing. I miss being in the room where it happens. I miss seeing everybody, and like, there's not one thing that I can say I miss more than the other. I miss it all.
mm, yeah. And that's so valid. I remember when I saw On the Grounds of Belonging at Wharf,
Hmm.
their past season, and there was this one scene, and this is what I just love about the theatrical experience and being in a room with people experiencing a story, is that there was one scene between the two main characters, and they're leaning in, flirting with each other. Maybe they might kiss, maybe they won't. And someone in the audience screams, "You better kiss him!" And the whole audience erupted in laughter because it was what we were all thinking in that
Right.
moment. And the two actors, one of them broke character for like a short second because it was just so funny. And that doesn't happen on Netflix. That doesn't happen on a movie screen. Like, that experience is not possible here on our phones or on our TV screens. So, like, for me, that's like something I miss. It's just that energy that's in the room with theater.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's with with that fourth wall, or that invisible fourth wall. There's nothing like it. And there have been studies done that actually show the heart rates or the heartbeats of an entire audience fall into sync as they're experiencing this. So there is a visceral change that happens to the audience. There is a visceral communication between the actors on stage and the people in the audience, where it becomes all one. And it's the only type of entertainment, of storytelling entertainment. I can't speak to, like, to orchestral music, or stuff like that, but where the audience is such an integral part of the theatrical experience. And it's just not this, like, we could very well, we could isolate ourselves for 12 days and then all convene at Westport and do a play without an audience, and it will not be the same kind of show. It will not feel like the same. It won't resonate the way it does when it's a full house participating with you, actively engaging and listening and feeding that energy back and forth. Yeah, yeah, that's, oh, Jacob, you just made me miss another thing.
Yeah. Oh, so to go off of that, do you feel that like theater can only exist in a live in-person space? So like everyone's talking about like expanding the barriers of theater, or like seeing if it can live in this digital space and experimenting, which is all great. Like art form and digitally should be something that should be explored, but is it theater? That's like one thing I keep asking myself at the end of the day. Like, is it theater? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
mean, my gut reaction is like, calling that theater is the same as calling almond milk milk. Right? It's not a. Don't try to name something. Don't to fill the void of what was missed. Right? Almond milk is never
Mhm.
going to be milk. So
Yeah.
don't call it that. It is its own thing that has its own merits and its own value. This
Mhm.
isn't. This will be an art form. This is an art form that should be cultivated. Is it theater? I don't think so. Is it television or film? No, it's some hybridized version. It's a new thing that out of necessity is being birthed right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so I don't know. Maybe in a way, calling this theater does a disservice both to theater and to this. They're distinct. They are two different things, right? Like in terms of my craft, I don't know what fight and intimacy looks like in this milieu, right? It could look like something more along the lines of what we do on a movie set, right? It could be more illusion based. It could be more like of the stunt world, as opposed to the quality of illusion that is needed to fool somebody directly in front of your face. This is a two-dimensional medium. Theater is a three-dimensional. So there are inherent aspects to telling a story in those two venues that are different from each other. So who knows? Who knows what this is going to be? I'm gonna hold off on calling it theater right now, but I will say that this is a necessary and valid form of storytelling and experience where we can use plays and theater here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then beyond that, I don't know. Maybe time will tell. If I'm proven wrong, great. If not, great. I don't think either art form is going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I love how you said that like this is still valid. So one of my favorite Instagram live shows that I've seen is done by the comedian Z-Way, and she has this Instagram live show called Baited, which basically the concept of it is she brings guests onto her show who have been canceled on social media, and then they have like clear-cut, unabashedly uncomfortable conversations about race. And like it's like this new popular show, but then one of her guests was Jeremy O'Harris, and he was like, hey, I love what you're doing here. I want to create this, but like on stage. So like we should make a theatrical version of this. And just like that thought, I was like, can you imagine just like being in a room and like feeling the uncomfortability like in an actual space rather than it being on here? But like still it being on here is so valid because you get the comments going through and you get like this funny digital space. So it's just like you said, it's valid, but it is different. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it will be.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to see how these two art forms kind of like riff off of each other. Like you were saying with Jeremy, if something like this gets put on stage, like what are the implications of that being there versus here, where there is that extra layer between us and the audience? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is something to be said for what the discomfort of what you just spoke of would feel like in front of a live audience versus here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Michael, let me ask you, there's a community question. So, Angie Palacio wants to know, what is a production that you have worked on that you felt like, what was the hardest fight choreography or direction you've done for a production? One that you were just like, this is serious, this is hard, I don't know if I can do this. Like, what was that experience for you?
Honestly, I've got three that instantly popped to mind. The first of which was at Westport, just because that was the teaser picture for Appropriate that got pulled up, and that was a wild fight because it needed to hit a lot of colors. It was a fight amongst a large extended family, so it couldn't be right. So we needed to figure out, how do family members fight? Family members fight differently with each other than strangers. What does it take for a family member to actually do violence on each other? It needed to be a little bit funny. We had a woman who was very, very pregnant in the fight, and what did that do to our choreography? So it was, and it lasted for quite a while. So there were a couple really interesting hurdles to have to jump through that. I did a Three Musketeers, and Three Musketeers is literally, for every scene that there is no fighting, there is a scene of fighting. And of the Three Musketeers that I did, one of the fights that we had to do was between the two of the Musketeers, Porthos and Aramis. And they were it was a play fight, but it was to a sonnet. And so the task for myself that I set for that was, how do I mirror the meter of a sonnet in the sword fighting without upstaging the dialogue? Because the author wanted, in this version of it, the author wanted us to simultaneously fight, and for the two characters to riff a sonnet back and forth during the fight. And then I think finally the third example, and it's interesting though, I'm going from hand to hand to swords. Now I'm going to talk about a gun show. A dear friend of mine and I did Troilus and Cressida for Shakespeare in the Park a few years ago. And we did it with modern warfare. And the entire fifth act was a war with automatic blank firing weapons. And it was about 15 minutes long. And we had 20 people on stage fighting simultaneously. And the coolest, the most difficult thing that was also the coolest was I had to know exactly how many shots were fired every time, where they were fired, and then we had to do something for what equity calls the cone of fire. There has to be a set distance between any actor and any gun that's being fired on stage, and that set distance is 10 feet. So we had to take all of those things into account with all of those moving bodies on stage, and have that safe and repeatable for the entire run of the show in the park. So those are three of the off-the-cuff examples of questions or challenges that I have been tasked to face, and that creative problem solving is one of the great joys of the business. So
that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
I was going to ask: are the most difficult or challenging gigs the most fun or the most rewarding, or do you get the most out of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges are just that. They're challenges. They're fun little things that I get to figure out how to work around, how to create. So it's incredibly fulfilling to be able to do something, to get in there for the first time. You know, like that. Every concept is different, right? So I've done over 10 Romeo and Juliets, which is not a big number by any stretch of the imagination. But the trick is to make all of these fresh, to take all of the director's ideas and incorporate them into the movement and make each thing fresh, so that there's no cookie cutter fight. I don't have a Romeo and Juliet fight that I pull out of my back pocket and give to people. So in that respect, there's always value. It's always rewarding to do every show. But the ones that present really, really interesting problems that I haven't come into contact with, or that any of my friends have come into contact with, to be able to get to figure that out is really kind of delicious.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So, Michael, before I let you go, I want to ask you one last question. Is there a piece of art that you've consumed during this time? It could be a play, a book, a podcast, an album, a show that you can recommend to everyone watching?
Oh, man. Okay. So I've been doing a ton of reading, and it kind of has been kind of fit into three categories. I've been doing a lot of reading for some writing projects that I've been working on, and I run the gamut from fiction to nonfiction to biography to historical fiction. Now, I'm not going to share any of those because I am actively pitching these writing projects. The other two categories, one, I think one of the aspects of this downtime that's been really beneficial to me, and I think beneficial to a lot of people, is self-reflection in terms of what's going on in society today, and inequities and inequalities and prejudices that have been happening. And I think one of the best things that we can do is try to work on ourselves to be the best advocate and ally that we can possibly be. So I've been doing a lot of reading on that, and one of the books that has been really powerful in terms of understanding some of that is a book called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, and it has to deal with how in like mid 20th century the government enforced policies and rules that really forced residential segregation, and how that echoes through and is still present today in neighborhoods, in schools, and how it's created a vast wealth divide. So I think it's a really important thing that we need to dive into. One of the other aspects I've been doing is just really light, utterly indulgent brain candy fluff reading. And for that, I have always been a fan of Stephen King. I have a giant wall full of his books. So when I need something to just kind of like relax and zone out and have some brain candy, I dive into those again. And I have been rereading the Gunslinger saga. I don't know if you know Stephen King. So the Gunslinger series for me was like probably what Harry Potter was for you and some of your cohort. So I've been diving back into that world when I need a break.
Awesome. All great choices. All great choices. Mike, thank you so much for joining me and downloading an Instagram app and making an account.
Just for you.
Yes, exactly. Mike, I can't wait to meet you in person over at Yale. But I hope you have a great rest of the day, and I hope you and your loved ones stay safe and healthy during this time.
Thank you. You too.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
That is another episode of Coffee Break in the bag, y'all. So thank you so much to Mike. I kept calling you Michael during the show because that's how I came to know you, but I know you have Mike on your profile. So I kind of switched between Michael and Mike, but thank you to Mike for joining me. As some of you might not know, Mike did not have Instagram before being asked to come onto the show. So he made an account and he downloaded the app just for us. So thank you, Mike. And y'all, this was the second to last episode of season 1 of Coffee Break with me as your host. So we're going to be off next week because the Playhouse is dark, but then I'll be back again on Thursday at 5 p.m. So 2 weeks from now with my last guest for the season of Coffee Break. Thank y'all so much. Everyone stay safe. Everyone stay healthy. I'll see you soon. Bye.